Hey everyone, on this episode of Teeter Talks, I had so much fun chatting with Andryanna Gonko. She is an educator, she's a speaker, she's a self-care advocate, and she's the host of the Juggle is Real podcast that I had the absolute pleasure of being on a little while ago. And we talk about all things burnout, how to come back from burnout, what the signs are, what are some things we can do to cope, and what does self-care mean? What does authenticity mean? And we had a really honest conversation that I'm hoping will fuel some really honest conversations for each of you with your communities, your families, about what you need to put yourself first to be able to live your best life. You're really going to enjoy this conversation. Enjoy, everyone. Andryanna Gonko. Hello, Andryanna. How are you?
Marissa, hi, I'm well. I'm so happy to be chatting with you.
I'm so excited that we get to talk again. You were so sweet to have me on your podcast, The Juggle is Real, a few months ago. I had such a good time and I got so much great feedback from that episode. So I want to thank you for that opportunity.
Oh, the honor and the pleasure is all mine. I'm so happy that we were connected through a mutual friend, and you just have so much wisdom to impart. I love everything that you're doing and all of the experiences that you've had. It's wonderful to be able to share that with listeners everywhere, whether it's on my podcast or yours or wherever you might be. It's just so great to have these conversations.
Well, thank you. I agree. And I am especially grateful to the lovely woman who connected us. I'm always so grateful to people who put themselves out there to connect people. So I really am grateful that we've had the chance to talk, and I've had the chance to get to know you a little better. I love following you on social media. You are a wealth of wisdom and knowledge, and you have the cutest little kids. So you have 3 boys.
Thank you.
In hockey, keeping you very busy. You are a busy mama.
I'm not lying when I say the juggle is real. But we're having so much fun along the way. So I will say though that I grew up one of 4 children, and I'm the oldest of 4. I have 3 younger brothers. So I feel like I've just been, prepping and preparing for having 3 boys of my own someday. So, now that I can connect the dots looking backwards, like Steve Jobs says, like now I know, like, okay, all those years of my little brothers and stealing my gum or like coming in my room or bugging me when I was with my friends. Now I get it. I'm like very well versed in the boy world.
Well, that is quite the dress rehearsal. I didn't know that about you, but that it does make a lot of sense. I do see that big sister. I'm a big sister too, so I get the big sister vibes from you. And yeah, that's so funny. But your boys are adorable, and I love following your content. You put out such great pearls of wisdom. Your podcast, The Juggle is Real, is really built around this idea of you building a life coming back from burnout, if you will. I mean, let's start there. I find, and you and I chatted about this briefly last week, I find burnouts become a very, relevant topic in my life and speaking to my friends and my family members. And I don't know if it's this time of year, something about the summer, maybe we can manage a little bit more, or we give ourselves a little more space, we take a little bit more time for ourselves, but it's something about coming back in September that it's, full speed ahead. And then of course the holidays are coming, and some people are already preparing for that and thinking about that. I just feel like burnout seems so much more common. But tell me a little bit, like, how would you characterize burnout? And tell me a little bit about your story and your experience with burnout.
Yeah, I'm so sorry to hear that you've been, having all these conversations about burnout, but I think it's a really good thing to keep this conversation going and to shed more light on it. And in a way, it is good that it's out there more, because when I was going through it, I wasn't as well versed. I didn't know quite about it. And I know that it's one of those kind of hot topic words. Another one is self-care. And we're going to talk maybe a little bit about that too. But in my experience, 2017, 2018, I had 2 children at the time. I had 2 under 2. I was also working in a corporate setting, and I had also taken on another teaching role as well. So I worked in advertising and marketing. It's a quite fast-paced and busy industry. Yeah. And I really prided myself on always being organized and being the go-to person and being the yes person. Like I wanted to be able to do everything and be everything for everyone. And so I definitely am a recovering perfectionist now. But at the time, I just didn't see that in myself. I was always striving to do more, to be more, and to be everything. Always striving for perfection, and inevitably falling short. And so, whether it was in my career or with my family or in my personal life, I just always felt like I was just rushing and rushing, and I could never catch my breath. And there was always something else. And I wasn't saying no. I was the chair of the student council because I thought that's what a good mom should do. I was always the last person to leave the office because I thought that was what a good employee should do. I was always the first person to take notes and to share. And I thought that's what a good colleague did. And so I had a lot of shoulds on my plate. And it wasn't until, I started, feeling and hearing these little whispers, these little nudges, like little things would happen. Like my skin uncontrollably was just, breaking out. I had rosacea. My hair was thinning, a lot of hormone changes too with having kids, but I was losing weight unintentionally, a lot of brain fog, and really I just felt like I could not catch my breath, literally and metaphorically. And so, these whispers definitely, got louder and louder. And thankfully I did listen long enough to, on my lunch break, which I would normally skip and try to whiz through, in order to get more done so that I could go and see my kids, and the mom guilt was real. I went to see some medical professionals, and I learned that it was, there was some adrenal fatigue and there were some issues happening. And so I'm really grateful that I had, the ability to go ahead and do that and learn about burnout, learn what burnout was, and then really reevaluate. And so for me, I don't look at burnout as a failure. At the time, I felt really, really shameful about it. I felt like it was my fault. I had done this to myself. And because this was something that I did, it was up to me to quote unquote fix it. And I, didn't share with a lot of people what was happening. And I thought, well, I got myself into this mess. I'm going to get myself out of it. Now I know it's definitely not a sign of failure. And for me, it ended up being this beautiful, beautiful awakening because it forced me to slow down, to have that evaluation, and to realize that perfectionistic tendencies are not working, and I needed to make some changes. And those changes were really small at first, but then I did end up having a shift in my career and leaving my job, only to learn after that it wasn't my job that caused the burnout, but it was just me trying to be everything and do everything, and inevitably falling short. So yeah, it was definitely one of those situations where you can't pour from an empty cup. And I had to learn the hard way that I had to take care of myself.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that. I think it's a story that many of us can probably relate to in our own way. You said so many things around being a perfectionist and shoulding, like, I think I should, or I should feel this way, or I should do this way, or a good mom should do this, or a good neighbor should do this, a good wife should do this, a good partner should do this. And doing a lot of the things kind of for that external, taking care of everyone else first before taking care of ourselves. I talk about this a lot with my friends and my family members, and we all kind of seem to be in that same place is, are we doing this to ourselves? Would it matter if we didn't, bake a cake from scratch for our child's birthday party? Would our kid even notice if we went and bought a $5 cake from the grocery store bakery? And again, I never want to take away these, I also think sometimes these moms or parents who do go above and beyond get criticized for going above and beyond. But if you actually really love doing it and it's not causing you stress, and it's not taking away from you as a person, then go do all those extra things that you love doing to go above and beyond. But it's when it starts chipping away at you, when you kind of don't recognize yourself anymore, you don't really have this ability to prioritize what you know matters, and you're caught up in this whirlwind of doing things that you've kind of just committed to, and you kind of just keep going because it's too hard to stop. It's easier just to keep going. I think that's when you really have to question, why am I doing these things? Who is it serving? And who will really care if I stop? Who will even notice if I stop? And when you talk about the physical, like that's just the mental part of it, right? The guilt, the expectations, the perfectionism. But then you start talking about the physical, right? As we get older, stress affects our bodies in terrible ways, right? You talk about weight loss or weight gain, hair loss, fatigue, all these different things that start to manifest. And you think, gosh, is this aging or is this life? Is it, or somehow we wear this as a badge of honor to be like, well, it's got to be hard and that way it's worth it, right? This is just how mom life or adult life or parent life is. So yeah, for you, you talked about having to make some changes and you talked about having to identify that yes, you had in a sense done this to yourself, but you didn't have to fix it yourself. How did you involve people around you? Because I do think that's part of the problem sometimes is that we want to quietly think we can fix ourselves or solve all our problems ourselves, but it does it not take a village to work through some of this stuff and to make things better?
Absolutely, Marissa. I believe that we take on so much, and we truly want to be able to do everything. And I think we can do everything, maybe just not all at the same time. And
Mhm.
so we really have to examine what's on our plate, right? And so you're mentioning, do we have to bake the homemade cake or do we have to do all these things? And a lot of the times we feel like we should, but we might just not have the capacity for it. So I did have to learn to reach out and to say yes. And it wasn't that I didn't have support. And I know for many people, when you are in the midst of it, it's difficult to put yourself out there. It's difficult to be vulnerable and it's difficult to ask. But when I started doing that, I used to feel so bad. I live in where we live. My parents live 7 minutes away. My husband's parents live 7 minutes away. We have, my sisters-in-law, my brother, like we have a lot of familiar support. We also have, great neighbors. We live in a great community. There's so many resources, both free and paid resources. But it wasn't until I started actually accepting the
Mm.
support, releasing whatever I thought that would mean. Well, I guess I'm not a good mom if I need help with this, or I guess I'm not, a good colleague if I have to leave work at the time when my day is supposed to end, or, and not having those boundaries. So, yes, I've learned that sometimes saying yes to support is the number one way that we can release some of that mental load as well as the physical load and all of the tasks that have to be completed, as well as just simply releasing and accepting that not everything has to be done. I was kind of laughing as you were saying the homemade cake, because for my kids' first birthdays, I was like, no, I have to bake the cake and it has to be healthy. And I was sneaking in like zucchini and carrots
Oh
and like
no.
made everything. And it was in the shape of the one and all of these things for the cake smash. And then my middle son just turned 8 recently. We had a birthday party with some friends. I bought store-bought it was like an angel food mini
Mhm.
cupcake. And then I bought the store-bought frosting and the mini marshmallows and whatever the toppings. And I said, have at it. Let's do this. And they had so much fun
Mhm.
decorating it themselves, putting it together, creating the combinations. And I feel like a part of me back then would have thought, oh no, a good mom doesn't do that. A good mom has to either bake it herself or go to some fancy bakery and get some ornate, cake of a character and something else.
Yep.
Sometimes simplicity is the best way forward. So for me, the support has been really, really pivotal.
Yeah, you're speaking my language. I say it often. There's no trophy for going it alone. And it's so much easier for me to say that at this point in my life because, like you, I used to hate asking for help. I just thought I was more impressive as a human when I could do all these things by myself.
Mm-hmm.
Realizing that no one was going to hand me a trophy after I baked, as an example, my kid's first birthday cake. No one was going to hand me a trophy for, not asking for help and kind of bearing through a hard week and not taking any breaks. And it's just funny how we play these games with ourselves to make ourselves think that we don't need other people. I mean, humanity was built on community, and it's actually way more fun when you do actually get to engage people. And I see it a lot with my kids. You know, we've been so fortunate to have really great babysitters, nannies. I have great in-laws. They have kids. I have great, my parents are great. So when my kids are exposed to all those different people, it is so good for them. They get so much love from so many different people. They want to spend time with my kids. They want to babysit them. And of course, I'm super grateful. But beyond our family, we have our chosen families. You know, I have some friends who don't have any parents or in-laws or siblings to watch their kids. You know, that's when you turn to your friends and you say, hey, if you take my kids this weekend, I'll take your kids next weekend. Or, I know we always talk about making a double batch of whatever you're making for dinner and bringing it over to your friend's house and dropping it off on the front porch. It just feels so much better when we can ask for the help and accept the help. And it's such a compliment to other people when we let them into our world and show them that we trust them enough to help us. So besides asking for help, what were some other things that helped you? I know for me, like making lists and kind of dividing and conquering, you know, with, be it with my spouse or my friends or colleagues or whatever I had going on, you know, pick the topic here. What are some other practical tips that you had to help with burnout and managing?
Well, in my case, a lot of it was accepting help and asking for help. But
Mm,
on the flip side, it really was a complete shift and internal approach to just how I looked at what my life was and what I wanted it to be. You know, it wasn't necessarily about doing everything perfectly, but it was more about recognizing what's the most important to me right now in the season I'm in with the capacity that I have and being able to prioritize
mm,
myself and what's most important at that time. And so it was really jarring for me to shift my perspective and to actually put myself on my own to-do list, right? Because when you're so reliant on that external validation, like I used to feel such pride when my boss would come to me and say, you know, you're so reliable. I know even if you're not feeling well, you're
mm,
going to be at work and you're going to be, you know, even if you're sick in bed, you've got your laptop. And that was like a badge of honor that I would wear, you know,
mhm.
or going to all the things and just really not taking any time for myself. So shifting it and being like, okay, I need to be my first and my top priority. And that was really, really challenging. And I think for a lot of parents, especially moms and especially women, just even hearing that me, myself, I put myself first in my life now, that can sound hard. And it was for me. And when I first heard that, it was like, there's no way that's not a good mom, wife, friend, anything. Right. And so it was these small, very, very intentional shifts of, you know, being able to take that walk, take those deep breaths, go to a yoga class and very, very
Mhm.
small, you know, make sure that I was checking in. And it was something that I had never done in my adult years. And so, really looking at those self-care practices as a form of nurturing myself physically, emotionally, and mentally, ensuring that my well-being was a top priority because I knew that the other way, right? The other way of everything for everyone else and not including myself, that clearly was not sustainable. It didn't work for me. It led to me not being able to support anyone because I was so exhausted and I was burnt out. So I couldn't be there in any capacity. And so
Right.
that lesson showed me that, okay, you know, in this case, I'm going to have to say no. I'm going to have to, you know, set that boundary that feels challenging. I'm going to have to release some things that aren't important to me, as important as
As
my
important. Yeah.
well-being, my family, you know, the season that I was in, and start from there. So creating that space for peace, for reflection, for quiet, for even joy in myself, you know, like
Mm.
even practicing the things that I had completely taken off, the things that I used to really enjoy. So, yes, definitely asking for help, but really having that internal look and saying, how can I put myself first?
It's it's so funny because from a common sense perspective, we know, like we know the analogy with the oxygen mask, right? When you're on an airplane, you have to put your oxygen mask on first before you help anybody else, because when you're unconscious, you definitely can't help other people. So why do we let ourselves get to the point of being unconscious? And we certainly would never wish this upon anybody else. Like I would never want my friends or the people in my lives, in my life, or my mother, if anybody I care about, to put me before their own well-being. I would never, ever expect that from anybody else, but we 100% do that to ourselves. And, this idea of self-care, I know you and I've also talked about this. Sometimes, people take it in one direction or the other and really kind of focus on the external self-care, the petties and the manis and the spa, which is all very important. But really, it's like, what do you need to take care of yourself? Are you saying no? Are you setting boundaries? That is the toughest type of self-care, where you're really doing the work that will benefit you the most. But it's the toughest work, putting yourself first and making sure that you're the best human you can be, so you can show up as your best self to serve all these people that you care about so much. And I do think, going back to the idea of lists and building that into what you said around prioritization, I started making lists of just to kind of get things out of my head sometimes, because they swirl around in there like a hamster on a wheel all night long. And I get them out on a list, and then I kind of sit on it, and then I reprioritize it. And sometimes it becomes so evident the things that could easily fall off that list, or the things that could be easily, delegated. I mean, sometimes delegation takes such a negative connotation, but, again, asking for help. So I think prioritizing and being realistic about who we are and what we can do is so important, because we cannot serve anyone properly if we're not showing up as our best selves in whatever capacity they're expecting us or needing us. So you also wrote a book. So you had the podcast, The Juggle is Real, but you also wrote a book, which I ordered right after we met. And I love the way, so it's called The Juggle is Real, Authentic Self-Care Planner, and it's an activity book for busy women. I would argue men can read this book too, to be honest. It's a guide to incorporate self-care habits into your daily life. And I love the way you've structured it around self-reflection, asking yourself, what am I proud of for myself today? What am I proud of? What am I grateful for? How am I going to care for myself? Because again, sometimes if you don't consciously acknowledge these things, we move too far past them too quickly. And I love really how you built that. Talk to me a little bit about the inspiration for the journal, how you use it, the type of feedback, the stories you've gotten about it, because I just think it's so well done.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Marissa. I appreciate that, you went and bought it, and that you're using it, because it's so true. We all have really good intentions. No, I don't think anyone is consciously out there saying, I'm not putting myself on the to-do list. I don't want to prioritize myself, but life gets in the way and these things happen. And maybe we want to do these things for ourselves. And, by the end of the day, it just, time gets the best of us. And by the end of the day, we just head hits the pillow, we pass out, and then the whole hamster wheel starts all over again. And so for me, with the Juggle is Real Authentic Self-Care Planner, coming from that experience of burnout, slowly building myself back up and really feeling like I was, tapping into myself and pouring into myself and allowing myself to be the best version of myself. After the Juggle is Real podcast started, I kept learning more, and this journey, was evolving. And so we were, in pandemic, in lockdowns. I had another baby. So we had our 3 boys in 2021. And that year was beautiful, but it was also very full and very busy, because we were still teaching our own children virtually from home. I opted out of having a maternity leave. So I was still teaching at the college here virtually. I didn't take a traditional maternity leave. And so at the end of 2021, we're all ramping up for a new year, and we're thinking of our resolutions and making goals. And I think all of that is really great. And I wanted to set these big, beautiful goals for myself. I also wanted to just take a friggin' nap. Like, I wanted to slow things down. I wanted that space. And so knowing how things can quickly deteriorate, I wanted to make sure that I was still able to focus on myself and find those pockets. And so when I started, it was really like this quick little page that I made for myself and like, what can I do? How can I commit to myself? I'm maybe not going to be, creating this big giant goal for the new year, but what are some small ways that I can make sure I'm incorporating care in an authentic way? And so I came up with these 5 pillars. So that I wanted to be mindful of, that I wanted to remember. And so I made these smaller goals within these 5 pillars so that I was nurturing myself, so that I was nourishing, like looking at how I can fuel my body. So I was moving, like how could I incorporate movement that was, authentic and realistic for myself? How could I continue to grow, right? Like maybe it's not these big giant goals, but what are some ways that I can continue that personal development and that growth? And then the biggest one was to discard. What can I remove? Like what can I release even for short periods of time? So I found it really supportive. I was, like this is great. This is totally doable. Even in this, busy lifestyle that we currently are living in, this is manageable, right? I can find these small pockets to tap into and then create these habits that then just become natural and normal and habitual. So I shared it. I made a little worksheet out of it. I went into Canva and thought I made it look all cute, and I called it 30 Days for Me. And then that evolved to the planner. So there's some short stories that are real from my life. There is that monthly window where you can set those small commitments to yourself in those 5 pillars. And then there is that daily process of coming back and turning inward and just remembering why you are so worthy of the care that you are investing into yourself, because it truly is an investment. And the return on that investment, whether it be a 10-minute walk around the block on your lunch break, or whether it be, waking up 15 minutes earlier and starting a gratitude practice, or whether it's, removing Netflix binging late at night and going to bed a little bit earlier, whatever those things are, they truly do have like a very positive return on whatever it is that you're investing in yourself. But we do have to stay accountable. And so this planner was sort of my way to stay accountable to myself and share this method that has been really helpful for me with those who I know need the help and support as well, because the more that I shared my experience, the more I realized that it really was not unique to me. Like so many people are going through very similar situations. And now that I know more, I feel an obligation to share that. And I feel, just a longing to support other people and to be of service, to let other people know that it truly is okay. And with the support, with the care, with these 5 pillars and this coming back to yourself, that, you can of course do everything, but maybe just not all at the same time. And you truly are worthy of pouring into yourself.
I love that so much. And as you keep talking about commitments to yourself, it makes me think of that quote, and I'm pretty sure it's Ed Milet who said it, but it's our self-confidence is built on the promises we keep to ourselves. And our ability to keep promises to ourselves fuels our self-confidence. Like just being confident and we can do what we stick our minds to and what we commit to. And it's that accountability thing too. There's something about writing it down. I'm a big believer in goal setting and, visualizing and writing things down, putting it on paper. And I do think there's something to be said about, again, getting it out of your mind, getting it on paper and just looking at something and going, I can do that, right? And then coming back and being able to check it off or highlight it or whatever gets people excited when they cross things off a list, to be able to say, I did it. Because I think that's what's going to build our confidence and our ability to then go out in the world and be able to say no to things, be able to set boundaries, be able to choose what's best for us, is when we're super confident in who we are and what serves us, right? I think, you talked about this earlier, this external validation. I mean, I'd like to think I'm a reformed external validation individual, but I think I still do it at times for sure. But I'm definitely more aware of it. I think I spent so much of my life trying to please everybody else and do what I thought was expected of me or what the next logical step was on this journey of life. But when you show up with confidence after keeping all these commitments to yourself, you become familiar with yourself and who you are and what will serve you. So you're not going to do things that won't serve you in the end, or make decisions or put yourself in those situations. So yeah, I love that idea. I also know that this idea of authenticity is
Mm.
something that, you enjoy chatting about. I think there's a lot of pressure that comes with that word. I have my own thoughts on it, but I'm curious for you, what does authenticity mean to you as this word gets thrown around so much today?
Authentic. Like for me, I do love the quote, the Oscar Wilde quote, "Be yourself. Everyone else is already taken." And
Yes.
and for me, growing up, I've already mentioned this, but the recovering perfectionist, not striving for perfection, not striving for something else, but truly, being and settling in who you truly are right here, right now, and in this moment.
Mhm.
So embracing that, perhaps there are flaws and we're so quick to point out our own flaws. But truly, truly thinking of myself as my own best friend and the people who I have in my life, the people that I love so much, I just think the world of them. And I love them so dearly for exactly who they are, not who they're trying to be, even though we're, striving for more is not a bad thing, but really feeling into who we are in this moment and being real, sharing this person who you are right now. It's allowed me to connect more with others. It's allowed me to be vulnerable, to share where I'm at. And that has opened up such deeper relationships for me. And just even sharing, you mentioned through something as simple as social media, it really shows other people that it's okay. And perhaps it's giving permission to myself to be who I am, but to others to like show up and be who they are as well. So when I say authentic in terms of self-care, I know that it's a buzzword and that umbrella can mean so much, but when you're thinking of yourself, like what is it for you that's truly going to be nurturing for yourself? Like what is going to help you tap into the joy? Is it, for me, I love things like yoga. I love hiking. I love quiet and reading. I have friends who are like, they're doing like martial arts and my best friend owns a CrossFit gym. Like she loves that intensity, and that to her is really what fuels her and what supports her. So what is it for you? And so it's not the latest TikTok trend. It's not what the celebrities are doing. It's not what's expensive or, looking cool on social media. It's like what is truly at the end of the day going to fuel you and bring you that sense of nurture within yourself. So for me, authenticity is just, yeah, showing up as who you are and embracing that right now.
It's so well said. And I think about as adults, we need this constant reminder because as a mom of two young kids, when I talk to them about, comparing themselves to others or looking for validation through the eyes of others. And I think, my goodness, as adults, sometimes we don't even have this figured out. It's so much easier to give the advice to our kids.
True.
It seems so much clearer as children that why it would be so silly for you to compare yourself to that person, or only, not wear this dress because so-and-so didn't like the color of your dress. But yet as adults, sometimes we're still, hindered by this idea of what everyone else is potentially thinking of us or what would please other people. And I often think sometimes we've found the word self-care to replace the word selfish, because people think the word selfish is such a bad word, when I think it's really about self-serving what we need to go show up in the world. But yeah, we need to learn to be a little more selfish and take care of ourselves and really focus on what we want, which is what really makes us authentic. It's just serving our own selves so that we can go serve everyone else, which is a big part of it. You have a podcast, as we mentioned, and you have so many phenomenal guests. I was so fortunate to be one of them. Talk to me a little bit about how you find your guests. And because people ask me that all the time, how do you find your guests? How do you pick them? What type of topics do you love diving into? And why a podcast? I mean, you had the book, you've got different outlets, you give talks, you do so many wonderful things through social. Why the podcast, and how do you find the right guests?
Such a good question. And thinking back, it really was such an organic flow of how it all came
Mm.
together. And it was just about listening to those nudges. A big, huge awakening for me was realizing that it was okay for me to use my voice, because we talk about this
Mm.
external validation a lot, and a lot of things that happened to me. And I believe we talked about this when you were on the Juggle is Real in your life, but was kind of dimming my light and was kind of
Mm.
holding myself back for fear that if I shine too brightly, that I was removing that from other people, or that other people wouldn't like me as much
Yeah.
because I was too much. And so it was something that I had learned through some, self-reflection and personal development. And so this for me was just finding where I was in that moment and knowing that I was going to do it imperfectly. Like I very literally started, Marissa, with like the earbuds that had the mic in it, talking into my phone. And I had written out like a script for myself, and I just read it verbatim, like out of a Word document. It was messy. It was not edited professionally. It was me just throwing it out there because that was what I had the capacity for. But I just had this nudge that I needed to share my voice and I needed to serve others. And the idea of a podcast came to me. I wasn't even at that time, in 2021, I wasn't even really like a big podcast listener. Like I love my podcast now. I subscribe to so many podcasts and I love listening. But at that time, I wasn't even. I had like one or two podcasts that I had listened to in the past. So I feel like it really was listening to those internal nudges, tapping into my intuition, just being like, okay, let's try it and let's
Yeah.
just do it. Right. And so for me, it really has been just going with the flow. I don't think that if I was still in that perfectionistic mode of it has to be perfect, it has to be polished, it has to be the best, that it would ever be out there. Because even today, I'm still learning, I'm still doing things. And I even where I'm at right now with, my schedule, I would not be able to have that type of a podcast. So instead of focusing on strategy and performance, I just very much did it imperfectly, but at least I started, and I've been able to hone in on that craft and learn as I go, and really really feel so much gratitude for the incredible people who I've had the opportunity to speak with and learn from and share their stories, whether they're a medical expert or a parenting expert, or they're coaches or creators, or just these incredible people that I probably wouldn't have the ability to run into. I live in Northern Ontario. Most of these
Yeah.
people are far away from where I am, and to be able to share that with others who might not have that ability to hear those conversations either. So let it flow. And
Yeah.
we're at, I think, over 120 episodes now. So yeah, you
Holy.
cannot connect the dots looking forwards, but now looking back, I know, me in my bedroom with the crappy headphones and just doing it. I mean, it had to happen that way.
It's so funny because I have people ask me all the time about how did you start a podcast? I can't believe you do. And honestly, I made so many excuses in my mind for so long, thinking, well, I don't have a soundproof room. I don't, like, just the stories I would tell myself. I need a mic. I need a this, a that. And it's so much easier than you think, but you just have to get started. You just literally have to do the thing. And, um, yeah, it's kind of funny because I really enjoy just having great conversations with people. And I think selfishly, I do it for me as I talk to people I'm interested in, people that I want to hear from. I think like you attract a lot of people who you just want to have great conversations with and have impact. But I always tell people, if you want to start a podcast, it's really not that hard. You just literally need to start speaking into your phone or a random microphone, and the rest just kind of comes together. So any stories for you that stick out? Any feedback that you've received after, you've been on this journey of sharing your journey and hoping to bring some comfort to other people in terms of what they're going through? Sometimes that's half the battle, is just knowing you're not nuts, knowing that you're not alone and there's other people who seemingly look like they have it all together that are going through it. Sometimes people say that to me, oh, Marissa, you just look like you have it all together. And I think, well, clearly I have failed in communicating what's really going on in my world, because I don't. But what about some for you? Do any stories stand out to you that people have shared with you, or pieces of feedback that you really hold dear and, really fuel you to kind of keep going?
That's a beautiful question. For me, I believe it was Eleanor Roosevelt said something along the lines of, to handle yourself, use your head.
Mm.
To handle others, use your heart.
Mm.
And so for me, on this ongoing journey, mindset practice and the gratitude practice has been huge. I've invested in the support that I've needed through mentorship, through coaching programs, finding communities that have really been supportive for me, especially in navigating, career changes and doing it, throughout the journey of motherhood. Um, but I think, when we're looking outwards, using our heart and having that compassion, like for me, I want to be in the right frame of mind so that I can be able to respond
Yeah,
from a place of love, from a place of empathy, from a place of, you just never know what someone else is going through, right? And
absolutely.
so versus reacting or making it about me or taking offense when, something happens that maybe, in the past I would have thought, oh, they must not like me, or they must be, this is something somehow reflection of
About
myself.
you. Right.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. And so, just really quickly, even like you mentioned, I have three sons. They all play hockey. My husband was a hockey player, so now he's coaching all three
Mm.
boys, and it's so beautiful to see that process. And earlier this fall, my middle son was going through tryouts for his competitive team, and there was another mom who was just so anxious, and she was just so nervous and just beside herself. She didn't know if her son was going to make it, and like initially I thought like, okay, but like it's just, 8-year-old hockey, not that
You
big of a
said it.
deal,
I didn't. Yeah,
right? And in many ways that is, right?
for sure. Yes.
In this case, what I found out after having conversations with her and just trying to, support her in that moment, she opened up to me to tell me that there was a lot more than met the eye in that case. And she was going through some legal procedures for some trauma that she'd experienced in the workplace that was really, really horrendous, something that you would never wish upon
Mm.
anyone. And so in that moment, I realized like she does not have the capacity for any added stress. Like a hockey tryout or, stubbing her toe would probably be very, very
Yeah.
harmful. So it's just for me, like I understand more so now than I ever did that we just have to show that love and compassion. And so I really, really try in my own life to, like you said, like pour into myself, give myself the space that I need because I know that it allows me to then look outward with that lens of support and compassion and how can I be there for others because I am full myself, because
Mhm.
I've taken the time myself, because I've had the journaling or the yoga or whatever it is in the small ways. I've invested in my mindset and my personal development and my care so that I can be a shoulder for someone and I have the capacity to support others in other ways, or I can, have these conversations with incredible experts and share their knowledge on the podcast or do these talks. And it truly is for me about that and really knowing that, yes, I do have these practices, but sometimes it's just too much for me too. And I am not doing it perfectly. And I butt up against these things myself. And I have to continually remind myself, and put these practices in place. It's not like you know it and now you're done. It's just like, the muscle and going to the gym and staying in shape. In August, I found myself with shingles, Marissa, and that was
Right.
a big reminder for me that even sometimes when things are really good and there's a lot of great things on your plate, you still need to slow down and you still need to set those boundaries, even when it's, seemingly all good things, because sometimes the stress kind of weasels its way in there. And so this is a
Mhm.
continual practice. I'm not, the expert. I'm not sitting here on a pedestal saying like, you have to do this and you have to do that. Like I'm going through this myself and, I'm still facing challenges and I'm still, coming up with, there's so many things that are distractions and we're all evolving. And so, I'm still learning as I go. And I think that remembering that always is really, really helpful that we're all kind of going through this journey together.
Well, isn't that the greatest thing that comes out of these podcasts is the conversations that they create, right? If we could just get people talking about burnout, talking about self-care, talking to each other, giving other people the opportunity to be there for us, or also just giving ourselves the opportunity to be there for ourselves and to step back. There's something about us, I think, that we don't give ourselves permission to say, you know what, I'm going to take a break. I'm going to take a nap. I'm going to not do this thing for the next couple of weeks, or I'm going to say no. I'm going to reprioritize what matters. We have to talk about these things because I find in our circles and our communities, or sometimes even with complete strangers on a podcast, we can find stories, journeys, ideas that we can relate to, and then we take them and apply them in our lives. And what a great gift to be able to have the opportunity to show up and do better. So no, I completely agree. I totally forgot you had shingles, you poor thing. But it is like, it's like stress. Like you can only choke it down for so long because eventually it'll manifest itself physically in ways that, you certainly don't want it to. And I appreciate that you talk about still having challenges. I mean, I don't certainly sit here with a microphone on my podcast on a pedestal thinking that I have all these things figured out. A lot of it is figuring it out as we go, sharing what I do know. And as I continue to learn or make mistakes, I want to share those with people who are around me. So yes, this is an amazing platform for conversation, and impact and service to others. I want to do a little bit of rapid fire with you, ask you some fun questions. Now, this is a podcast about leadership, and I know you've talked a lot about self-leadership. How would you define a great leader?
For me, great leaders truly must lead themselves first. I think we've talked about a lot, that self-leadership piece. It's listening to your inner voice, having that self-awareness and really being intentional about who you are and who you're being before guiding others or before telling others what to do, really looking inwards first. So for me, a great leader must lead themselves first.
Yeah, you can only fake it till you make it with that one so long. I really do think you need to show up as a full person to lead other people, right? So I couldn't agree more. I mean, really important on a leadership podcast that we talk about burnout, self-care, and authenticity because we need to show up as our best selves as we're, guiding other people and caring for them. What is one of you mentioned a few of your hobbies and pastimes, but what else do you like to do in all that spare time you don't have?
Yeah. Okay. So favorite pastime is being alone. Like just alone.
Yes.
And it's so silly, but I love to be social, but I also need that time to recharge and really that alone time, whether it's going for a walk. I love being in nature, yoga. Those are my go-tos. I wake up before my kids, like purposely. I set my alarm a lot earlier so that I can have that time by myself. Yes. And I carve out space for this. Honestly, Marissa, you say the time you don't have. I do. I carve it out for every single day, almost as much as possible, even if it's just 10 or 15 minutes. I love that personal development and also reading like a light, fun, beachy romance novel. Like that's my jam. Yeah.
Your whole body just lit up when you said fun, beachy romance novel. I don't do a lot of reading, but I do just listen to a lot of podcasts, and some of them are pretty ridiculous. So I will put those up there with a fun, beachy romance novel. And I love how you said every single day. Like, don't just carve out self-care once a week, once a month. Find 10 minutes to go for a walk. And I agree. I love nothing more than being alone. Don't get me wrong. I love my family. And my husband's always like, just go spend the day. I'm like, no. You go. You take the children and leave so I can be alone in my house because that is the dream. Again, just temporarily, but it feels so good. Yeah. You also mentioned that you live in Northern Ontario. What would you say is the most Northern Ontario thing about you?
Okay. Well, I am a Northerner through and through, born and bred. My family's from the North. I have left, a few times, and I've lived in Toronto. I've lived in Ottawa. I've, traveled a lot. My heart is in the North so much that I even started a blog with a friend and colleague called Northern Heart and Home. So we can really share and uplift the people, the places, and the positives of the North. So we also, hold events and curated experiences that you might not be able to have in Northern Ontario. So we're really trying to bring more here and also to just really bring light to all of the incredible things that exist. So the most northern thing about me, and also you're laughing because I was sharing about some porchetta bingo the other day, which is, it's not maybe a northern thing. It's very much a Sudbury, Ontario thing. So that's where I'm from. And it's a really, really fun thing. You don't knock it till you try it. Porchetta is like a specially seasoned roast, like a pork roast, that it's delicious. And there's a few places that will do it, but essentially it's like playing bingo, but instead of yelling bingo, you yell porchetta. And that's your prize, is like the plate of porchetta. And it's a great time. We do it as fundraisers for our kids' hockey teams, and just a really good northern way to get out.
Well, as an Italian girl myself, I know exactly what porchetta is. And I love that you play bingo to win porchetta. So I cannot wait to visit, because I want to come to porchetta bingo so bad. Honestly, I might bring it to where I live. I think we need to bring it to Southern Ontario. I think you're onto something. Oh, that's awesome. What is one of your favorite fall indulgences? It's a season of sweaters and chai lattes and candles. What do you do to indulge in the fall?
Honestly, just outside stuff, anything like out in nature. I love like a good hike. I was dying. Like, I love going out with the kids and the family. They're like, Mom, we don't want to go hiking. And I was like, okay, well, let's go on a treasure hunt. So we like, I downloaded a geocaching app. And so we were doing it that way. I like tricked them into come with me. But honestly, like with a friend, being out in nature, in the trails, it's just such a beautiful time of year. No bugs. So yeah, a good fall hike.
I wish you and I lived closer, because we would do a lot of yoga and hiking and porchetta bingo and quiet time alone with each other, but quiet. That sounds like a lot of
Let's
fun.
plan it out. Anyone who wants to join us, this is what's happening.
Yes,
This is what's on tap. Got a hike, yoga, some alone time, and some porchetta bingo to wrap it up.
I'm in. I would
Okay,
travel for that. Yes.
done.
So where can people find you? You've got the book, you've got the podcast, you have a website. Where can people find you?
I share most on Instagram. So my handle is Andryanna G. So it's ANDRYANNAG. And you can also visit my website. It's andryanna.com. So all of those resources are there, some free downloads, and you can get to the Juggle is Real wherever you get your podcasts. And you can also find it at andryanna.com. So wherever you are, just find that name. Blame my parents for the spelling and everything else, but it's Google it up. That's all.
Yeah. No, I love your name. I love it. I do, for some reason, want to call you Gonko. I don't know why I want to put an R in there so badly. Maybe because Gronkowski, the football player, but I have now trained my brain, and I shall never say Gronko again. So what's next for you? So you have this amazing journal. You have the podcast. You're doing all this incredible work. You also show up on TV every so often. People may have seen you on various TV channels doing segments. You're kind of all over. You're a solopreneur doing amazing things. What's next? What are some of the things on your bucket list? What's coming up for you?
Oh, well, thank you, Marissa. I feel the same way about you. I'm just so moved by the beautiful work you're doing and the people that you're supporting and serving. I think I'm just so glad that our paths have crossed. For me, I've been expanding the Juggle is Real and opening up time in my schedule to include more speaking at live events, so I can really connect with people live and face to face, facilitating workshops. So I am opening up some space there, and if anyone is interested, to contact me, because I just want to be. I want to be out there and having more experiences with other people who are like-minded and who are, wanting to have these conversations.
Well, I am so grateful that our paths have crossed. Thank you for your kind words and for all your support. I know that if people are looking for some support along their journey to recover from being perfectionists or to dig out from burnout or feeling overwhelmed, they should absolutely look you up. They should get your book. They should listen to your podcast. It's nice to be able to have these conversations, just hearing someone else talk about it, and then maybe taking it to our own friend groups and communities to help other people around us. I just think it's so important. I want to thank you for being here and making some time for my listeners. And I really look forward to catching up with you again very soon.
It's such an honor to be here on Teeter Talks. Thank you so much, Marissa.